Hello, BookTube. I have some mail for you. Not much mail. The tiny little scraps and specks that we can expect in 2020 are high on the hog, fatted calf days of 10 books in the mail every day are long since over. Oh, remember those mail hauls? There were mail hauls where I got 10 books in the mail just in the first delivery. UPS, first thing in the day. I would make a video, and in the middle of that video, you could hear the doorbell go off because the U.S. Postal Service had just delivered another 10 books. Oh. Of course, those days are largely on hold, right? Because nobody's leaving their houses, and at least in the hot spots, and New York is one of the hot spots, and nobody's at the warehouses, nobody's at the shipping and receiving. The publicists aren't at their desk, crammed in elbow to elbow all day long. They're not there, so I'm not getting much in the way of mail. I have, I think, one book that I ordered online. I've been experimenting with ordering books online. Not new books. I mean, with going to places like Book Depository or eBay, and ordering secondhand copies. Fortified by all of the warning stories of Sean D. Stanfast, I've been trying my hand at that. I've been largely satisfied. I now know something of what Sean was hinting at in his videos, which is that it kind of is the Wild West. Some sellers will simply lie about what they have. They'll be looking right at it and they will type a lie about it, figuring that you won't go through the rigmarole of sending it back to them. Or figuring they can cut their losses and avoid a negative review by hearing your complaint and refunding your money automatically, or sending you something new, sending you what you actually wanted. And I mean, I got that impression from Sean's videos, but I guess that's always been true. I mean, there's a greater illusion of accountability if you were to buy a new book at Barnes & Noble or Amazon. But you still don't know. I mean, there are 8 hands between your order and you opening the package. There are 8 hands at least. The drones and robots in the warehouse to go and find the thing by barcode. Humans to sort it and apply it to its address. More humans to set up the package. I consider that the ratio of horrible experiences to good experiences is very good. And I've got a package here today that is probably that last thing that I ordered. But I also got periodicals in the mail. 2 really good ones. 2 of my favorites. In fact, they may be my 2 favorite periodicals. The first one is, the first one has schmutz on it. What is this? Save now. Save now. Okay, well, I don't want to save. So, first one is a broadsheet. How many of you are familiar with a broadsheet? It's the Vineyard Gazette. This is the Martha's Vineyard Gazette in an old-style broadsheet newspaper. Great big thing that folds that's just a wonderful old newspaper for Martha's Vineyard, an island off the coast of Massachusetts that was until 2020 a vacation hotspot. Has a long and varied history of its own, and has a wonderful newspaper, the Martha's Vineyard Gazette, which I was reading for decades before I was writing for them. I am now their book reviewer, but I was reading, like everybody on the island reads the Gazette. Everybody does. And most of them, when they get the Gazette, you also have just prize-winning photography. I swear, the big picture that tops the fold of the Gazette, so many times that big picture is just beautiful. Just a beautiful, old-style, local photography the way it used to be done. But most people who get the Gazette immediately turn to the back, where you have the Vineyard Gardener and Bird News and All of Nature there. You've got those 3 columns: All Outdoors, Bird News, and the Vineyard Gardener. And most people go to them. These are also original photos, where somebody on the vineyard has spotted an interesting-looking bird. The Vineyard Gazette has mostly doom and gloom to report these days because the Martha's Vineyard is very much a tourist destination. And what are you going to do if you're a tourist destination and people have been ordered to stay in their homes? Several businesses on the vineyard are looking down the barrel of a lean winter, and that's even with federal support money, most of which is being hoarded by the federal government and not doled out to businesses. So who knows? Who knows what the commercial landscape will look like next year, and who knows if next year will be any better, right? And diagnostic news all around the world shows that numbers for COVID-19 infections tend to be dropping, but the numbers spiked even in very hot climates. So it could be a matter of herd immunity, but it could be a matter of seasonal weather patterns. But we could either way see a big resurgence in the fall and be in lockdown all winter long. It's a depressing thought to think about, but the Vineyard the Vineyard Gazette has to deal with that. They have to deal with people who are all walks of life on the Vineyard, who are facing perhaps grim times. But not all of the Vineyard Gazette is grim. Because every once in a while, when you turn to the meaty section right in the middle, that has the editorials and the letters to the editor, every once in a while, you will get a pure jolt of joy. A pure jolt of joy. You will get someone reviewing a book. You will get me reviewing a book. In this case, a book we saw on this channel, The Moon Always Rising by Alice Earley. Remember, I described it to you on this channel, and it's a novel about a woman, a self-described scrapper, a high-powered professional woman, a woman in mergers and acquisitions, who goes to the Caribbean, falls in love with a dilapidated and abandoned mansion that the locals tell her is haunted, buys the mansion, and finds out that it is indeed haunted by a sea captain. And I remember when I was reading that description and I was showing you the book. I hadn't read the book yet. I was talking about how that immediately reminded me of The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. And some of you emailed me. I leave my email on every video. And some of you emailed me and said that you really love The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, the movie. Some of you were familiar with the TV show. A lot of you didn't know there was a TV show. But the movie is brilliant. Just fantastically good. Just one of the old-style machine Hollywood black and white romances that does nothing wrong. That is just absolutely perfect. And on a rewatch, the script is much more sophisticated than you give it credit. And oh my God, that ending. Oh my God. The ending is just amazing. Just amazing. And I made that comparison as soon as we saw the book on this channel. But then I thought, when I settled down to read the book, I thought, okay, you should probably banish that from your mind, because that's not fair, right? Those are awful big shoes to fill for any novel, especially a debut novel, which is what this is. I read the novel. I really liked it. It was a pleasure to review, and I finished it off. I finished off my review with a call-out. I wasn't thinking that I was going to do it because I thought it would be a little unfair, but in this case, Alice Earley rises to the challenge, so I didn't feel bad at all. My last paragraph is like all self-respecting ghosts, Captain Griggs, that's the sea captain who abandoned the mansion, is dealing with his own deep-seated personal issues. And by intertwining the story of these two scrappers, Ms. Earley turns Moon Always Rising into a thoroughly enjoyable tale of personal renewal. It's been a whopping 75 years since Josephine Leslie, writing under the pen name of R.A. Dick, gave the world The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. Alice Earley has given that beloved old story a sensual and knowing tropical update. So there you go. It won't be all bad news in the Vineyard Gazette, which I don't imagine any of you take. I don't imagine any of you take the Vineyard Gazette. But if you do, it won't be all bad news. Because in the midst of, there'll also be chirpy, no pun intended, bird news, bird sightings, and a wonderful review by yours truly. And if you happen to take the Vineyard Gazette and you read the review by yours truly and you like it, puts a smile on your face in the midst of a lot of bad news, feel free to tell my editor. I love the man dearly, but that always helps anyway. Any freelancer is helped by that. And then we have my other favorite periodical, which is the TLS, the London Times Literary Supplement, which is the foremost literary review organ in the world. And I tend not to walk you through the whole of these issues. I just got this, so I haven't read it, except for the two parts that I have read. The first thing I do when I get the new TLS is to look at the table of contents, because it's going to affect my reading enjoyment. If a book by an author I can't stand is reviewed, not a book that I can't stand, I'm eager to read that, to get someone else's opinion, especially if they're going to like it. I could learn something. Or I could get righteously angry and say, you've misread the whole thing. That happened just recently in the TLS. Not that I can't stand the book, but that I can't stand the author. Then, because as any of you, especially you authors out there, know, it's just the review that is good news. There's no such thing as a bad review. It's just the review. If you get that attention, then you've won. And I wouldn't want to see that in an author I can't stand. And I also look in the table of contents to make sure that there are no reviews written by people I can't stand. That really ruins the experience. And this issue is clear. That's the first thing I look at. But then, even before I go through the issue and read it, I read every word of the TLS with painstaking attention. But because we do these little glimpses of the TLS for this channel, and because I don't want to drag you through the whole of the TLS, I go straight to the letters column and JC's column in the back, the NB column. And the letters column this time around did not disappoint. There was a piece in the TLS a few weeks ago by Will Self, the novelist Will Self, who is widely hated, I think, personally, in the literary scene in London, but I think he's tremendously talented. And he wrote a piece about the life of a freelancer and what it's like, where your rates go up as your name gets better known, and you are a gun for hire, you are a taxi on the stand, you are ready for any demand as it comes out. He rather tauntingly at the end of that piece asked the hypothetical question to his readers, so you have to decide, did I labor long over this piece to warrant what the TLS paid me for it, or did I dash it off in half an hour? Which is freelancer code speak for I dashed it off in half an hour. If you had labored over it, you would not raise the question. And I read that and I thought, okay, well, I wonder what other freelancers will make of that, this whole piece, not just that last taunt, because freelancers are very different animals. I myself am a very fast writer, for instance. I'm a slow incubator, as one friend of mine once put it. I incubate for a long time, but when I write, when it comes time for me to write, there are witnesses. there have been witnesses to how fast I can do that. It's freakishly fast, mainly because I can compose finished prose in my head. I compose mentally while I'm on the dog walk, or while I'm, on the seat of ease, or while I'm in the shower. So when it comes time for me to clear my mind and do the Mozart fingers on the keyboard, then I'm off to the races. Usually, I'm off to the races then, unless there's a lot of fact checking to do along the way, which can be very tedious, and that usually applies only, for me, to the made-up stories. I don't usually need to worry about that with history. But that's me. I am a slow incubator and a fast writer, whereas I've known other freelancers who didn't incubate at all and let all of that work come out in the writing, so it took them forever to write a piece. And that also applies to freelancers that, despite what you wags out there may be saying about my age, I did not know, like, for instance, Virginia Woolf, who was an incredibly slow incubator and an incredibly slow writer, so that the TLS could send her a book, and especially in the years of her fame, before she once she hit it big and had lots of other obligations, they could send her a book and she'd be mulling it over in her mind a year later. You wait on it if it's Virginia Woolf, but still. And I've known freelancers all along that spectrum, and that's what Will Self's piece was all about. And there's a great letter here, a great letter from Berkeley, California, from Jeffrey Myers, who must have a story to tell, a story or two. And I want to read it to you. It's about freelancing. I can add a telling anecdote to Will Self's amusing account of life as a speedball writer. I'm not sure how much Jeffrey Myers knows about Will Self. Speedball is a decidedly loaded adjective to use, but I think I know how he meant it. The day after Saul Bellow died, an American newspaper rang me at 11 a.m. and said they'd pay double rates if I could write 1,000 words on his significance as a writer by 1 p.m. No problem. A few weeks later, they rang again at 11 a.m. and wanted 1,000 words on nuclear engineering by 1 p.m. When I said I knew nothing about that subject, they replied, okay, make it 1:30. I have no doubt that anecdote is true. I have met editors like that. So I have no doubt that that's true, and that's hilarious. That's just hilarious. And there's more. There's more in this TLS. I've looked through the table of contents just briefly, but I'm going to read through it then, and if there's anything really noteworthy or unfair or a sulfur and brimstone condemnation of a book like we saw from Colm Tobin, I will let you know. I will report back. But the next piece of the mail is this package. And it's taped all over, so I'm thinking it doesn't come from a publisher. I'm thinking it comes from, it's probably something, the last of the books that I ordered for myself online. So let's take a look and see. Oh, no. 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 No, this I think came from one of you. Boy, though, ordinarily is there a note in here? Ordinarily I can tell why it came from one of you. Not in this case. A little bit of background here. I mentioned a while ago that I really loved Everyman's Classic hardcover reprint volumes, like that whole shelf there. Found a few of them, really liked them, and right around then quarantine hit and all of us were locked at home, and I wasn't sending out books to people anymore, and I wasn't getting books in the mail anymore, and a lot of you took it upon yourselves to start supplying me with books, even though in the 3 years before that, the dictum was, don't send me a book. Don't do it. I'll either already have it or I won't want it. So don't do it. It's a waste of your time and money. What are you doing? But a lot of those Everyman Library things were bullseyes. They were perfect hits. There were no there's been no misfire in there. And I'm not getting as many books, and some of you aren't in as tight a lockdown as Boston is. So I loosened that rule just a bit and said, all right, fine. For the duration of the quarantine, you can send me books if you want. But with the Everyman's Library, you at least had an idea of what you were doing. This is just a shot in the dark. That's what this is. This is just a shot in the dark. And that we cannot have happen. You cannot just start sending me books willy-nilly. I mean, I'm incredibly grateful for the Everyman Classic Edition, but you can't start just sending me books that you want me to have or that you think I like. That brings us right back to don't send me a book territory, because that is not going to work. That just isn't going to work. Although in this case, it kind of sort of does. So I don't know what to say here. All right, this is a novel. We've seen it on this channel before. I've had it before. I had one of those extra tall mass market paperbacks of it. I got rid of that. So I don't have a copy of this at the moment. I guess now I do. And I am sort of curious about rereading it. I like this author. So this was technically a good choice, but still, I've been told by other booktubers, you can't really be squinting sternly at people for sending you presents, can you? I've had quite a few booktubers say, I've been doing booktube for years, no one's ever even thought of sending me a present, so don't knock it. But still, this means somebody had to buy this and either have it sent to my address, which is not hard to find, or ask me for my address and go to the post office and mail it, which is another kind of rigmarole. Anyway, this is by S.M. Sterling, who wrote the Emberverse series, and I bet that's where this comes from. I bet that I've praised the Emberverse series many times, a series of books where all the technology in the world stops working instantly, and the whole world has to live with that. They have to figure out how to go on when there's no technology anymore. I love the Emberverse books. I've read them all. I've read the whole series, and although I think they get a little weaker and a little fruitier as they go along, I'm a big fan. And somebody must have thought, in fact, I can practically piece together the mental process behind that. Somebody probably thought, okay, he read the Emberverse, and he really liked them, and he's not going on a Steve rant about the author, so he must like the author too, and I've read the author, and there's a book by the author I really liked, and I wonder if he's read it, I'll send it to him. Even though you can guess almost certainly that I have read it. And that's this. This is A Taint in the Blood by S.M. Sterling, the first in the Shadow Spawn series, an urban vampire series he did that's actually very good. Has a lot of good, as usual with this author, a lot of good, thoughtful world building behind it, which when you think about it, you don't particularly need that for an urban vampire novel, and you get it here. And I have read A Taint in the Blood, and I read the second book, and I think the series goes on from there. I think there are at least 2 more books that I haven't read. But I don't have any of them. I don't have A Taint in the Blood, and I am definitely curious to reread this. This came out over 10 years ago. Yes. Exactly 10 years ago, 2010. All right, so in terms of sending Steve a book, this was a narrow thing. This was a near-run thing. You picked a book, probably by association, and sent it to me on a guess, on a gamble that sets off all the alarm bells that I have, because you shouldn't do that. But it worked. In this case, it worked. I'm not encouraging you to do it again, but it worked, so you know who you are. I apparently don't. I'll have to, if Free doesn't eat your return address label, maybe I can find it. I did not get any warning of this, that's for sure. So, no, a lot of times, a lot of you will say, I'm sending you something. There's something wrong with you people. Do I look like I need books? I swear. A lot of you say, when you send me presents, there'll be a note or there'll be a follow-up email that says, well, I've learned about so many books that I ended up loving because of your channel, that I felt like I owed you something. That is absolutely not true. It is my pleasure, my honor to be making these videos. This is not a pay and then collect at all. It's my honor to make these videos. I have needed to talk to you every day as much or more than you've needed to hear me. So there is nothing like that. There is no obligation. My whole existence, personally, professionally, even some would say hygienically, is to recommend books to people. That's what I do. So anyway, this particular thing I will let fly. It's even in a hardcover, so I will actually reread this, and I will reread it this week because. Okay, I'm not going to encourage you too much more. So thank you, whoever you are. I really appreciate this. I will read this, and then it will go on my rapidly expanding science fiction bookcase. I had to pull apart a whole bookcase just to start putting science fiction together because I got all of those anthology volumes, and I think I have one more of those coming, and that has been so much fun to do that, to have a science fiction bookcase again after so long, and this will go on there because I remember liking this. So. All right, so there you go. That is your mail. We have 2 periodicals. The Vineyard Gazette with a book review by yours truly, and the Times Literary Supplement, which has never seen fit to publish a book review by yours truly, but I venerate them anyway. And a book, A Taint in the Blood by S.M. Sterling. I have very little of this author, considering how much I like him. I have Dies the Fire in mass market paperback. I don't have Dies the Fire in a hardcover. I think hardcovers of that would probably be hard to find. I don't think that he was thinking, or his publishers were thinking, that it would take off. So probably the only hardcover of Dies the Fire that you could find would be a library copy, something like that. I don't know. And I don't think I have any of the other Amberverse books. And that is not a call to action, okay? That is not a call to action on my part. I don't have them, and that's just fine. You shouldn't be spending money on me and going to the post office for me. You shouldn't be doing any of that. So, but I really appreciate it. So we'll wrap this up. That was the day's mail. I had a surprise for me, and always a pleasure to see a book review of mine in an old style printed newspaper. Instead, I mean, it's always wonderful to be under somebody's masthead anyway, even online. But to be in a print journal. That warms the cockles of me old Bailey hack heart. So that's fantastic. So I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.